Okay, so I know I mentioned before the idea of sorting out your textiles while we're in this lockdown, and I just thought I would start by talking to you about some of the basics. And one of the basics is packing and storage. So this has come from the idea that not everybody is lucky to have archive storage boxes like this kind of one here, which is all acid free and properly made for storing textiles. Most of us are using carrier bags, bedroom drawers, all sorts of bits and pieces. And while a lot of these items are okay, most of them contain different types of acid that will eventually over time destroy your textiles. So one of the quickest and easiest ways is to line your drawer or storage item with an unbleached calico that's been on a really hot wash, hasn't had detergent used, and then using that calico to line the inside of your drawer or storage item. Then once you've done that, you're putting a protective layer between your outer item, but you still need to protect the individual textiles within that. And that's one of the ways, things that we can look at now. The easiest way is acid-free tissue paper. That's what's on my table. You can hear rustling. This acid-free tissue paper, if you lay it between the textiles, over time it absorbs the acid and other chemicals, and it starts to turn yellow. And it's the yellowing that you see that indicates that it's time to refresh the tissue paper. And that's what you can do. You can go through your textiles, checking every now and again. When you start to see something that's yellowed, then you can replace it very, very easily. So some really quick ideas of ways to store your textiles, depending on the size. It goes without saying, ideally all textiles need to be laid flat. So I've got an example here of one of the pieces from my collection. So there's this beautiful 19th century silk here. You can see that over time, where it's been folded, you get to have this silk crease in the middle, and that then becomes a weak point. So ideally all your textiles need to be laid flat. Depending on size, we're not always able to do that, and that's the difficult thing. So if that's the case, can I suggest rolling? If the textile then fits in this way into your storage item, that's the narrower end, you can always then roll it. And the best way to roll it, simply again, is to use a couple of bits of tissue paper, and using the top end, if you put your hands on both sides and then start to pleat it, and then you've created a sort of a little sweet, really. We call them sausages. And that pleated sausage has the space to keep your textiles safe, but without being too big. So then if you can see what I'm doing, then I'm laying the sausage at the top and then carefully rolling the textile around, and you can see it's got a lot of lovely bounce to it, but it's not too much. So it's supporting the textile and it's rolling it gently, and you can see where I'm starting to get some creases in the middle here. I need to just gently pull those out so that there's not pressure on that crease that's in the middle here. And hopefully over time, with that resting, that will help to ease that crease in the middle. Now obviously when you're storing these into your drawer or your item, you don't want to be stacking lots of these on top of each other, because then you'll be putting a downward pressure. So if you have flat textiles in the same item, in the same space, if you could lay the flat textiles at the bottom and then lay this on the top. Now I always like to then wrap this in another layer of tissue paper to protect it, because there's obviously any dust or anything that could be on the outside. And on the top of my drawer or my storage item, I always put a layer of tissue on the top to stop any dust residue landing on there. I take that off, and then I can see the textiles inside. Now, if you are somebody like me who works very visually, you may, when you've wrapped your item in the tissue, then can't see what it is, you may then want to look at tying a little acid-free label using an archival pen with archival ink, so that if anything touches anything, it's not going to cause any damage. And then that way you could look at it, the item on the side, without having to unpack everything. But that would be one of the best ways to store a larger piece of fabric.